Hey, today we're going to change the friction wheel on this Elna 62C. You can find some details about lessons learned in the description below. Remove the top and then take off the shaft clip that I'm pointing at. Mine was missing. So then you undo the spring. You lift out that whole assembly. Take off the screw from the little channel and remove the channel. And take off the screw from the spring on the reverse mechanism. Unplug before you start anything. Take off the main wheel. And then remove the belt. Or at least undo it, I guess. Now there's 3 big screws for this bottom plate. And then there's another clip, shaft clip. You remove that. And detach this coupling like so. And then there are 4 big screws here. And then remove that whole assembly. So here there's a few things missing. I stopped the video accidentally. You're going to remove the electrical panel, mark each wire before you unscrew them, then unscrew them, cut the heat shrink to separate the wires, pull the lights through the lights wire through the holder on the motor housing, and then I undid the screws on the bottom. Here I pulled out the motor assembly. There's a spring here you got to take off. And then another shaft clip, which I'm using just a small screwdriver to get in there and twist it off. I know there's a tool for that, which I don't have. And then you can remove that whole piece. And then there's another shaft clip on this guy. Same deal. Little screwdriver. Make sure you hold these guys. Mine went popping off into a different room. Took me a while to find it. And then you can take the wheel off. And you can put a new one on there. I got it from internet. Vendor sells parts for these old things, unbelievably. Put the shaft clip back on. Little squeeze with the pliers. Again, there's a tool for this that you should get instead of pliers, but works kind of. This one spins so much nicer. And we put this back on. And then put the other shaft clip back on. And that's all good to go. Now here I broke the piece that holds the wire to the motor assembly so that it doesn't get tangled. So I had to glue that, I think it's phenolic, onto there. So magically that happens like this. And then you need to thread the light wires through the phenolic hole. And that shaft on the left needs to have the right orientation when you put this thing together. I have it in the right orientation, and I'll show a picture of how that looks later. Here I forgot to put the spring back on. Maybe you caught that. So I'm putting that back on here. It's a little fussy. And then thread all the wires back in. These wires need to go outside of the loop of the timing belt. I think I have it pulled through the center of the timing belt. I fixed that later, I think off camera. But if you don't do that, you'll hear the wire rubbing on the belt when you roll the belt wheel. Here I'm trying to show the shaft coming up into that hole. It's kind of hard to see because it's slightly off frame. Sorry about that. And then I need to get the belt back up on the main wheel. And here I'm fighting with it, trying to get that shaft into that hole at the top there. Turns out to make that easier, I reset the forward and back settings, thread forward and back settings a little bit, and that makes that shaft come on a lot easier. I'll show a picture of that in a bit. And then I'm connecting the base back in. Trying to get the timing belt to go around the lower wheel. And then I'm attaching the timing belt on the top as well. And then this coupling, reattaching it, didn't show that very well, so I'm going to do a close-up here. That's the coupling. There's a shaft clip that goes on that shaft. Here I'm getting a clip on there. Shove on with a little bit of plier work. and make sure it all works still. Twiddle the knob. Now for the wires, these were a total pain in the butt. The shortest one is the biggest problem, so I put that on first. It's the one that touches the black piece but on the inside, and there's another device like a coil that also connects there, so you have to capture both when you screw it down. It's kind of tricky. It took me like 20 minutes to get these wires back on. I've spared a lot of the footage of that, and then I've quadruple speeded the rest of the footage, but it still takes a while. And then I found that when I moved the wheel, you could hear the timing belt rubbing on those wires, so I ended up undoing all that stuff. Actually, it was the wires to the light need to run on the, I guess all the wires need to run on the outside of the timing belt, and the wires from the light were running on the inside. So I had to remove them. And then stuff them through and around the timing belt. And then reconnect them. These wires need to be tucked very neatly under this assembly because there's a plastic piece that also interferes with the timing belt if it gets pushed out by the wires. So there was a fair amount of fussing with that before I got it to be quiet. Good news is it's really easy to hear the problem. Then this thing you put back on. This is the reverse assembly. Just slots on there, and then there's a screw for the spring. And then there's this black channel that also has a screw. The channel is keyed, so you have to have it in the right orientation. And the overhanging part sort of sticks out toward me there. There's a piece that slides back and forth in that slot. That thing is also asymmetrical. You want the long part pointing at you. It's really hard to show that in the video, so you don't get to see, but when you pick up the other assembly, you can see me working that piece in there. Yeah, right there. That thing has to be the long way out. Lots of things should move when you start tweaking those dials, that dial. And I'm putting the spring back, and this clutch, and I'm checking to see if it goes forward when it's supposed to go forward and backward when it's supposed to go backward. And I'm checking the reverse wheel, make sure that that does what it's supposed to do. You can see me interested in where it's rubbing again, but I don't cover all that in the video because it's too painful. But I do measure this shaft because I'm missing the clip there, so it turns out to be 4mm shaft. I think they're all the same size clip. Here I'm showing that where I'm getting rubbing from that plastic piece. It's kind of hard to see, it's the white thing down below. I got that tucked away a little better. So then the lid goes back on and it's kind of done, except that it needs to be timed. So I did a video on timing this machine, which you can go watch. The gist of it is you mark a piece of paper at the lowest point of travel. Cardstock worked better, I guess. And then 3/30 seconds up from that, you make a little mark, which you can't see because it's off screen here, sorry. And then these need to be loose. And I actually had to work the timing belt around a little bit on the upper wheel because I needed to get this aligned so that I could reach the screws when it was nearly close to being timed. So that's a little detail that I don't show. But if you have an angled Allen wrench, you'd probably be okay. Now we move the hook to meet the needle. And it was kind of stiff, so I used a screwdriver to try to help it around a little bit. Maybe not nice, but you can see the hook coming right there to the needle. Then you raise the needle 3/30 seconds. And then you go underneath to tighten the screw. But you find that the shaft pulleys are separated, so you push them together and totally mess up the timing. Tighten it down and it doesn't work because you just screwed up. But I don't know that yet. I'm still tightening the screws. So then I go check to see if it's okay. Hook comes around, goes right there. Needle's coming up. It almost looks like it might be right. So I go up 3/30 seconds, and the hook definitely passed the needle, which is bad news. So I have to start again. So undo the screws again. For both of the pulley screws, snug that against there. Move the hook around till it's right even with the needle. And then the card again. Lower to the lowest point of travel. Keep going up 3/30 seconds. And then without nudging anything, Retighten the screws in the back. Locking down the timing pulley. Then double checking, the hook comes around and hits right there. And with the card, it's 3/32 up. So then the bottom plate goes back on. And we try sewing with the thing. Here I'm threading the upper thread. Skipping a few steps there, and then sewing. Seems to work okay, but after a while I realized I'm hitting the plate occasionally with the needle. It's too far forward toward us. And there's no fine adjustment. I took the front part off here, and there's no way to adjust that forward and back. Turns out the bottom and the top need to be adjusted relative to each other a little bit. So I'm unscrewing these 4 screws that hold the bottom to the top. Not unscrewing them all the way, just loosening them a bit, and now there's some play and I can move this thing back and forth. So I get it centered, which I guess I didn't show, and then I'm tightening the screws underneath without nudging that, maybe nudging it a little bit, and then tightening the other screw in the back, again without tilting the whole thing because I'm afraid I'm going to de-align it again, and then tightening all 4 screws down hard, and it's all fixed. And here's a little ducky pattern showing that it can sew both directions. Thanks for watching.